That's really exciting.
Okay.
Can you tell how many people are watching? Have we ever had anyone?
11.
Well, we're gonna have
meeting.
one.
We had 11 people watch the meeting?
Last meeting, yeah.
Come on.
But I mean, we watched it a couple times because we had a
Oh, no,
technical
no,
issue.
no. Oh, so that included you guys.
It
No,
included us a
fine.
couple times.
No, when you do Facebook Live, you can tell how many people are actually watching at that moment. Like they're logged on. You can
I
see
know.
the Bob, it'll tell you.
Joe Maranka is watching this to make sure that it's embedded correctly on our
Also
website.
had one.
So
We
we
have
have
one so
one.
far.
We don't
Definitely
know
have
who
one.
those other like 6 people are though.
It's just frightening to think 6 people whose lives are worse than mine.
Wait, I'm sorry, did he not say we're already live?
Yes. Oh,
Well, listen, I was actually being serious. Like I was hoping that people were watching it because it's free. I'm being serious. It's free PR. Anything to get the message out, and if there are people watching it, if the developers watching, even better. Maybe we should send them an invite. I'm not being,
Yeah.
being serious.
No, we can
can
spread the
probably-
word on this.
We can also,
See,
I mean, the city can also cross promote.
just
promote
out
these
of chit chat comes an actually a good idea. Like, hey, there are certain people we might even want to send the agenda to. I don't know who they are, but
We sent it to the press already.
oh, do we? Okay, well, we put some thought into it, but there may be people we want to, at the very least, even if they're not gonna log on, certain people, and I mean, like certain elected officials, some stakeholders, maybe they should see our agenda,
Mhm.
and maybe, we can decide. You have a better handle on I do. You might want to even think of some developers that you want to see, hey, this is what's going on, so that people look and say, even if they don't log out, like, oh, wow, all right, this property I'm familiar with, this property I'm familiar with, maybe I should, one, like, what came to mind were, that I saw an article yesterday about one of our brownfield projects. Was it in the paper? Is that where I saw it? Was it a press release? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was in the paper, right?
Yeah, I think it was in Business First.
Yeah, and I was reading it and I was thinking like, oh yeah, that's, it's one of those things where as I'm reading it, even though we've been engaged in it, because I'm on that committee, you get a different perspective when you see it in the paper. Like, oh yeah, that's one of our projects. But then you think if you're a developer and you see that, like, wait, hold on a second. They got credits for that? Like that would there's like, and then you start, and the article it wasn't that in depth. It was good enough where you got a handle on it. There's something here. There were some incentives, and now you drive by it, and now any developer that sees that is going to say, wow, all right, look at they obviously they knew it was available to them, and they worked with the county, and the county helped them out.
A good way to follow up on what you're talking about is, was it last year, Andrew, that we did a brownfield webinar?
Mhm.
And we picked up a developer from that, so maybe, and I know Kathy's got that list of developers that were present on the webinar. So, that's one way to follow up on it.
cross promote too. I mean, that's what, we do that with GDNRTC as well, and we get additional traffic between like what we post for meetings and what GDNRTC posts for meetings, and I post on my LinkedIn pages, so
Yeah,
it goes.
the social media aspect too, we can do Facebook, we can do like have a post for each meeting too.
But if the county has social media
We do.
pages, then
We do.
you could
I
promote this on
typically use
those.
it though, I mean, but Matt, you can work with Kevin on that. I mean, I think that he may not be aware of things that you would want to disseminate publicly.
Okay.
So, I mean, you're more than welcome to reach out to him.
we work with Kevin, like we keep in touch with him, and Joe does a good job of helping, like, if there's a story or whatever. Joe does a good job in his office.
We're gonna have to stay close
Picking up
going
like the
forward
IDA
too.
stuff, the department stuff, and the laminating stuff.
I mean, he
And
put
working with
that on
Kevin.
LinkedIn right away.
Right, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
624.
You did a good job on that.
I know, and he always talks to Kevin before he does it, so. It's a
Yeah,
good system.
so, I wasn't trying to, I'm not suggesting that I just wanted to kind of, since we had mentioned it, I just kind of wanted to,
You might get 10 people watching.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of wanted to come back to it and just, bring, a lot of times we just get so caught up in what we do, we forget that there may be some other avenues that maybe we're not following up on. Not a huge deal, but it's something that you're gonna want to consider.
Absolutely.
Can you all meet?
Yeah, we already have.
We have.
I don't
Yeah,
think
we already did. No,
Okay,
you
Chairman Updegrove.
No, that was gonna be roll call. I already
Oh,
called the meeting
okay.
to order. I called the meeting to order when we went live.
Okay,
I don't mess around.
all right.
I got Chris here keeping an eye on things.
No.
He not.
I
was
I can
nodding
feel it.
off.
Oh, no, you sorry. I can feel the anxiety. Okay, here.
Okay. Mr. Bocio.
Here.
Mr. Casale.
Here.
Mr. DiPaolo.
Here.
Mr. Forma.
Here.
Ms. Johnson said she wouldn't be here, and also Ms. Peck will not be here. So we have quorum.
Okay, approval of the 9:27 meeting minutes. Mr. Powell, Mr. Casale, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, financial report.
So I've provided you with the usual, with the trial balance for the unrestricted funds. The checking account balance is $203,596.60. And in the unrestricted, the balance is still $57,281.81. That's still the ARPA money. So the next document is the phase one, which is our HCR admin grant. And that runs from October through to the end of September. So as you see, the figures here, we've
Hold on a
fully,
second. Mine's out of order. Let me get,
I'm
what page
sorry.
are we on? Phase one land bank operations budget?
yes,
Okay, all right.
so we have fully expended and been reimbursed for that $150,000. As you'll see, it says the grant fund balance is zero. We have a round 3 that we have applied for and signed, so we're getting another $150,000. That goes, it starts October 1st again, and that'll run through till September of next year, another $150,000 of admin.
So we've already been, we know it's coming. We've already been awarded it. Is that state money?
The land bank initiative from HCR. And is it okay if I just give a little
Go
bit
right
more
ahead.
detail about
Go right
phase
ahead.
one money? The conversation I had with the New York State Land Bank Association yesterday, there was a discussion at their conference in July with Crystal Loeffler, who's the president of HCR, concerning this funding and the renewal of it, since it was a 3-year, renewable grant. And this is year 3 coming up. So the discussion really centers around the fact that like Syracuse and Buffalo and Oswego and all these other land banks are saying that this isn't enough funding for operations. So those tiers that started with based on your Paris budget, which is the reason we got 150,000, are likely as part of the conversation to increase. So we should, I don't know by how much, but I would expect it would go up like, maybe 50 to 100,000 to level the operations. Cause I'm expecting Syracuse is gonna wanna get like $300,000 or $400,000 for their operations. They get, I think it was 250 now. That's the highest tier. So there were 3 tiers. It was, it's 100, 150, and 200. Syracuse is at the 200, and I think they're asking to go up to 300. So that would bump everybody else up too. But again, it's an ongoing discussion, and I just wanted everyone to be aware of that that is part of the funding talk at the state to continue this operations support.
So at the next meeting though, which you may want to say is they should increase the support, but we would be willing to give a portion of the $6 million that the governor swept from the EFMAP money from us this year.
Okay.
That we'll be willing to give more of that.
Yep.
And then the state's still 5.8 million to the good for what they took from us this year.
Okay.
And then that would, we're live, right? Because I don't have a problem with this because it's just the reality.
You know that he's,
Writing it down?
well,
I'm just taking-
I'm making sure Matt knows that
The
what you're,
state has been very generous they're very supportive of land banks. So the bad news, they took $6 million, seems to have impacted you on your budget.
Our budget,
Us.
our budget.
But
including taxpayers.
including taxpayers, that's true. I've heard about that once or twice here. But the good news is that they seem to be really supportive of land banks, so we will see
I am
some of that
appreciative of
funding
that.
coming back to us.
I am appreciative of that. I do see So, but, if you want to take the lead on the next conversation, just let me know how that goes.
Okay.
I wouldn't take the lead.
Okay.
Do you understand he's being somewhat?
Yeah, I do.
I don't know
He's not sure.
Would you like to join that meeting?
Maybe I don't know all the details, but I can pick up the, what I was
Later.
The thing about that funding too is that it'll be part of an ongoing conversation, and I will report back as soon as I hear more.
I just think the governor's not one of those 6 people.
So we don't
Yeah.
have 6?
There you go.
It's gonna be hard for
I'm
us
guessing
to
no.
ask for money.
The
Like, we just-
last point I want to make about it is Crystal at that same conference told us the amount that they've allocated to land banks, I might have put this in a report somewhere, in the last 5 years is $110 million. And the amount that's been spent is 12. So there's
Lot of money.
ample opportunity.
Well, we've been spending ours, so.
We've been doing,
We're
we're
doing
right in there. Yeah, absolutely. We're-
So the next thing is the phase 2 money, which is the big spreadsheet that you have. This hasn't really changed since the last meeting. We're kind of on hold right now. We're waiting for that access agreement so that we can start working on those 7 Niagara Falls properties, which I believe is hopefully going to be approved at the next council meeting. So that Rodriguez is ready to go. We have the committed funds down at the bottom. You'll see 638,330 that we need to spend, and Matt can talk further on this. But what's going to happen with this money is we got the 1.4 million, and she knows that we have committed the 638,000, and it was supposed to be really spent before the end of the year. So what they're going to do with this 1.48 is pretty much she's going to allow us to extend the balance of this into next year, as well as apply for more money.
Okay.
So when I get into the Paris budget, you'll see the number jump, but that's because we're going to have next year like this balance plus new money,
Okay.
which is a little unusual, but they are going to allow us to move this money in.
Now, LBI stands for Land,
Land
Land
Bank
Bank
Initiative.
Initiative. Yeah,
and that money is that state money? too?
yeah, every time they've allocated money to land banks, it's gone into this land bank.
Is it all, is it from not that it makes a big difference, is it from HCR or is it a different source?
It's all HCR, it's all administered by HCR.
And you don't mean the access agreement, you mean the sale agreement.
The access agreement
No,
needs to be on the city council agenda next month so that they can do the work. This is the
So we need to
stabilization
start on
agreement.
work,
the
'cause
sale
they haven't
agreement,
transferred the properties yet.
the sale agreement, we've just said, forget it, we need to get into it because it's been paused for way too long. The issue that still has not been resolved, and I think the mayor's trying to address this on a larger scale, is that when we transfer the properties, we always have these issues of back taxes and fees and water bills, and nobody will, we can't get them erased. And so he's, I think, trying to do a resolution to the city council to take care of that. once and for all.
Got it, okay.
Yeah, so while we're waiting for that, we just want to get access so we can get the work done. And
Okay.
then we'll address
I'm not
this.
sure how the access agreement would need to go to council.
Because otherwise we can't, oh yeah, I don't know.
Because it's not a funding issue, so I'll double check.
Yeah,
So
because we
we,
just want to get in and get help.
and we have been working with our legal office to prevent this from happening in the
Yeah.
future, so, if we do start acquiring properties again for
Yeah.
tax foreclosures, we now have a process where we're going in
Exactly,
and shutting
yeah.
off the water immediately.
And we need to go meet with the
Which,
water board
you know,
too.
It really is. It's something that should happen. I don't know if
What
the-
was the issue? Is somebody still using the water?
The issue is that from the water board perspective, unless we go in and turn off the service and turn in the meter,
Gotcha.
that property still accrues water bills, even if it's not on the water.
And even if they're not using water, there's still probably a certain basic surcharge.
There's a basic
Correct.
minimum
Okay.
fee.
And even though the land bank's not subject, like we shouldn't be subject to those fees, there's no process in place and the water board's saying, no, you gotta pay them and they bill, so it's like,
And we have no control over,
Yeah.
like, the water board is the water board, and they'll sue.
Well,
what they-
we'll wait till later to have that conversation.
The other thing was,
I don't want Matt writing it down.
Well, I took them around and we looked at those
I know, I
meters
don't
in
realize
those houses,
and
and
take his notes.
5 out of 7 meters were just missing and one was damaged.
well, So that's the other issue is that we get charged
And the city
for
gets
missing or
Oh, for the
damaged meters.
Yeah.
That's a fee on top of whatever the bill might be. So the process that we're working on with our legal office and with our
This, and I don't mind,
inspection.
I don't mind, this is 1,000% in deference to the mayor. Send the mayor over there. I know you're mayor. You can take care of it. People listen to it, you know,
Oh yeah, I mean, and I think he'll figure out the
yes.
water bills and everything.
So, before we get into all these other projects, now, we're not gonna go through all these on the LBI project commitment log, but I do have a question about Rodriguez and where they're at.
Mhm.
But, the Niagara Street property,
Mhm.
what's the status of that?
I had it cleaned. I had all of the debris removed.
Because we did it once, right? And then I drove by it probably, 3-4 weeks ago, and it seemed like right back where we started.
It was cleaned out. The debris was removed. I think it was,
I think there was a window broken too.
the door was broken. We boarded that. The property is part of the transfer that's grouped with all of these properties. I have a meeting with the community development department to talk about our grant that was given for that property, but we're looking to stabilize it also with LBI funds. It's not on this list because none of those funds have been dedicated to 1129 Niagara Avenue yet.
Okay.
But the thought is between those funding sources, whether we go with the CDBG grant route from the city, or we strictly use LBI funds to get it to a point that we can transfer to a developer. The project was a larger scope than what we initially anticipated, and we weren't able to secure the adjoining properties.
Either
So-
one of those other two, so it's.
Although I think somebody called us about one of the adjoining properties that they acquired.
1131 was rehabbed and went up for sale. We kind of figured that's what we wanted.
So I think the new owner called us about 1129 actually, which I told her was with the land bank.
And 1125, just so everyone's aware,
Oh, we don't,
11.
wait, 1129, do we actually own it?
It's in the
in the
list
process.
of
Yeah, we
those.
don't-
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the list trying to get to that point, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So we'll ultimately have two of them, or we have one next to the one we.
Just the
The last point about the
That's the one
adjoining
we're talking about, that's the one that I
Yeah.
drove by
Yeah.
and had the broken window.
Yes.
That's ours, that's the one that's in the middle.
in the middle. Yep,
The
that's
three.
ours.
Okay,
That's the one that we would focus all of our attention on. We kind of got, talking about these adjoining properties. 1125 is owned by this Prince Bacta from Buffalo, who's got all these properties in the city. He's a unique
And code
character.
enforcement was working on that,
We're
right?
working with that.
We asked code enforcement to, because he owns several properties and he wasn't willing to sell. So.
Yeah.
I don't wanna take,
Oh, no.
we had 1129, we went out and looked at the one's getting rehabbed, which was good, but, we couldn't acquire it. 1129, Prince Bacta, we had code enforcement go out, because I think he's got 14 properties in the city?
Yeah.
And then the CDBG grant, we never finalized, correct? Because the city said that they don't want to share the admin fee with us. And I think that was a sticking point with us, because that's a lot of work, and
It's
we
also-
want the fee.
And it's also the case with that grant, that if we need to move funds around, we have to go back to the city council to get approval for changing the amount we're spending on this address and that address. It would be very cumbersome. Whereas with the LBI funding, we could stabilize 1129 practically immediately, because we have most of the work already done.
so who owned, the adjoining property, which would be the one to the right?
The one to the right, yeah, it's
Yeah, that one looks
1125.
A little bit, but not, is that this developer? or
Yeah,
this
Prince
landowner?
Bacta.
So he now owns it.
He owns 1125. I did want to let everyone know that informally, Bob's Trash, who was our contractor on the removal, told me that all of the debris that was in our driveway was coming from that address. Because he said they cleaned it once before. All of the debris that appeared came from that backyard.
Wow.
So one of the things we did do is with our last grant, the HCR phase 1, is we had a little bit of money at the end of the grant that we needed to spend, and we bought those cameras.
Security cameras. We're going to put up the cameras and have them, trained on the doors, the windows, the side, the driveway. We got a bunch of them. We can do any of our houses.
Well, like I know Well, I mean, when you fix one property, obviously it brings a light to the other ones that are next to it.
Right.
So I would assume that Prince Bachta would understand that if we're gonna be investing money in the reuse of this property, that the adjoining property is gonna become an issue. Because you can't have the garbage from their backyard ending up in our front yard.
Right.
It doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's not right, and we're asking, we're using taxpayer money to try to keep this property afloat until we actually transfer it to somebody that's gonna reuse it. So I do have a real problem with the Prince Bachta property having their trash removed onto our property. So I would
agree.
say, Kevin, whatever you can do through the city channels, to either keep an eye on that or work on that, or have somebody go out and take a look to see
Yeah, what
what's
was-
actually
What
happening.
was the result of code enforcement? I don't remember. What was, because they did,
They put, notices on all of his properties, so they gave Cliff the list of his addresses.
So I mean, the process of code enforcement, they'll go out, they'll tag him, they'll give him a certain amount of days to correct the issue.
yeah.
He corrects the issue, that's the end of the story.
Right.
There's, do
I
you
can
think
tell you,
And
I
then,
know-
we'll follow up on that and find out what the status
I'm
is.
just familiar enough with the code. I mean, if you stand on the sidewalk and look at the property, you can count 10 violations.
well, I mean,
Moving
we can do that, but
trash
if
from
he,
one property, to another, that's not code, that's.
Well,
criminal, right?
that's a criminal.
well, it's a dumping issue, but
Yeah.
then it's a matter of proving.
Yeah.
Right, you gotta prove where it came from, who did it.
Right,
So,
that's what I
that's
say,
where the cameras-
informally.
That's where the cameras
That's-
could help.
That's a problem, different standard, right? Because if you're gonna talk about some sort of criminal penalties or sanctions, or even a type of a violation of it that would be under the penal law, then you have, obviously, all that has to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. And there's your problem. A little bit different with code enforcement. The violation is what it is, it speaks for itself. If the violation exists, it's a violation. There's no real burden of proof other than it exists. So that's one of the things that obviously, we would want to engage the city's help on that, because we're really trying to focus, it feels like you take one, 2 steps forward, 1 step back on that property. And, it's important to the city. So that's why we're asking that the city, engage fully on that and just kind of remind them that it's something that we're watching. I drive by it every time I'm in Niagara Falls. I don't know why, it's just because I know where it is. That's the only reason. It's not because it's that property. I know where it is. It's right on my way to Trot, where I go pretty regularly. So I always drive by it.
I drive by it a lot too, and all of them too. So it's that property is unique and is going to require a specific sort of strategy, even more so than 2010 Niagara.
But it's tough because it's not even just the location. It's actually not a bad block. It's the 2 houses on either side of it. That's the problem. I've seen worse.
Well, and I don't want to get too, out there with this, but if you imagine Main Street as like an artist's place, like an Elmwood Village, someday, that neighborhood right there would be prime to walk down to the shops and the restaurants and the whatever's on Main Street. Like that would be a great location. And that, when the neighborhood comes up, it would be walkable. It would be all those things that, dense, urban, that people like desire. But it's going to take some time, and that's like Syracuse's program. It took them 8 years in a neighborhood. And I'm not suggesting it take 8 years, but like to do all of it, it's just the process.
Oh, there's a lot of activity the city's doing a lot on the Main Street corridor right around there, right? Where we're about to award a contract for the streetscape redesign, so that should be going into construction. This is along Main Street corridor. That should be going into construction probably within the next year and a half.
Well, all right, good.
And then we have all the other
Yeah.
property acquisitions, things like that in the neighborhood.
Yeah, those are some ones we're working on too. So with respect to the LBI project commitment log, so where's Rodriguez Group? Initially, what did they tell us they were gonna have these properties that we provided, that they're gonna have them stabilized by the fall? Is that still on track?
They always give me the window of 6 weeks from when they're allowed to start. So if they were allowed, if we had the access today, it would take them till what, mid-November?
It's not, it's not, they've been ready to go. us getting, allowing them on, so once we get the access
I
agreement,
understand.
yeah, so. it's
Well,
not
and that's why we're being allowed to roll it over, because the problem is now I'm not a contractor, but it's difficult, because a part of what we've engaged them for is, roofing.
Yeah.
On some of these properties, and I'm not a contractor, but it's not that easy to install roofs if it's snowing. I mean, I know that they can do it well.
We're still in the window of time that we can get this done though.
Yeah.
I think we're still pretty close, but I think we can get,
Well,
Council meeting's the beginning of November, correct?
it's like 6 or 7.
yeah, so, and we literally have everything to go, the second that comes to us.
So it just needs to be
it's
approved by the
a call
council
and
and
say
then
go
call
out
and
there,
say,
yeah. Because we've been keeping them, Matt's been keeping them up to date, so they know
Yeah.
no
the date of
chance.
the council meeting and that their crew's
I
ready to
mean,
go.
the legislature, I mean, this isn't, I have no idea what the rules are over there, but the legislature calls special meetings all the time for one-offs, if we have something that's important.
Oh, they can call a special meeting,
We-
they never call a special meeting.
I mean, they meet twice a month. Council,
There's not another October meeting? Well, we're already in the end of October.
we're already, yeah, I think they
I
just,
forgot it's already with the 25th, okay. All right, well, that's fine.
I
No
mean,
sense in calling.
there was a lot of back and forth between Katie and their legal department, and then, you know what I mean, and trying to reference to the
All right.
department before you finally just say enough is enough. All right.
I'm good.
Okay. Shall we just move right into Paris?
Sure.
Okay. So, the public authority reporting, is a compliance thing that we have to, abide by every single year. So just a quick overview of the way the columns are and how the form, how everything's reported. So the first column, is for last year's actual expenses, 2023, and they're the exact numbers from the audit. They have to match our audit, which has already been put into our annual report into Paris. So these numbers all have to match.
Jackie?
Yes.
I know, I think I ask you this every year,
Hmm.
and then 3 days after you give me the answer, I forget. What does Paris stand for? That's a government thing, and I think I'm probably not the only person, maybe some folks watching.
Public
Public
authority.
authorities
Public
reporting.
authority reporting.
Information system.
Okay, I'll remember that until
You know,
one
yeah,
day.
the reason we know that is Jackie's like,
till 3 o'clock. Yeah.
we were talking about the acronym this morning, and she's like, I suppose she was gonna ask me.
No.
I swear to God.
Did you?
I did.
I'm not
I
asking
said
next
so.
year. I'm not, I might not know, but I won't
I
ask.
definitely know, but I was like, public authorities, I don't know, and I Googled it. So.
Maybe next year on the agenda, I'll put public authority reporting information
That would be
system,
more informative.
Paris.
definitely.
I'll definitely do that. So the next column in 2024, it's the current year's revenues and expenses to date with an estimate of what we're going to be reimbursed or spending between now and the end of the year. And then columns 25 through 28 are all estimations. So starting with the federal subsidy and grants line, so 2023 is from the admin, is from our audit. And starting in 2024 indicates $150,000 from the HCR Phase 1 admin grant, plus the $638,330 that will be spent before the end of the year. That's what's left allocated for that Phase 2 you saw in the report. So then in 2025, it's kind of an anomaly in that we've been given an extension on our HCR Phase 2 grant from 2024 to spend the remainder in 2025, plus apply for another grant. So we'll be getting our $150,000 for HCR Phase 1, the remaining $619,720 from the Phase 2 extension, and another $1 million for the Phase 2 grant. We're saying $1 million. We got 1.4 last time, but knowing that the funding is probably going to go up, instead of asking for 1.4 million, we're going to ask for 2 million, and that would be $1 million a year because it's 18 months. So we're saying like we're going to spend $1 million a year to get that, the 2 million. So in other non-operating revenues, that those figures are bank interest, property sales, and HCR Phase 2 admin fees. We collect a 5% admin fee on what we send in for reimbursement. So 2023 includes the sale of Grand Avenue for $85,000. That's why that number's a little higher than 2024. 2024 is bank interest, HCR Phase 2 admin fee, and the sale of 6 Ashley Place. We sold it for $1,200. Going into 2025, that's the bank interest, HCR Phase 2 admin fee collected, and the predicted sale of the 7 Niagara Falls properties that we're going to be stabilizing. So then for 26 through 28, the bank interest, the HCR Phase 2 admin fee collected, and we are predicting we're going to sell approximately 5 properties per year at about $50,000 a piece. It's an estimation, it's kind of the best of what we're hoping to be able to accomplish. So moving down into the expenses, we have the salaries and benefits. So 2023 is actual from the audit. 2024 is where we are now, plus an estimate till the end of the year. And then 25 through 28 is an estimated expense. We're hoping to possibly be able to increase staffing. We may need to increase staffing, so we kind of put that in there as a possibility. So going down to the professional services contract line, that is legal, audit, closing and real estate commissions, paychecks, the construction management services from Rodriguez, and any other consulting that we do. So in 2023, that's from the audit, but it's a little higher because my stipend was in there as a consultant. And also we had larger contracts with Upper Edge and Harris Beach. We did a little bit of work with them. And 2024 is where we are now, plus an estimate of what we'll spend before the end of the year. And 2025 looks a little higher due to the increased expenses we'll incur with the sale of the Niagara Falls properties, like the real estate commissions. In 2026 through 2028 are an estimate of
Jackie, hold on, also in there is like the Rodriguez group, right, the construction, the consulting and construction group, that's why that number's so high, so.
Yep. And then 2026 to 2028 are an estimate of basically those same expenses. But that's assuming we're gonna sell 5 properties instead of 7, so there's obviously gonna be less commission. And most of our engineering is gonna fall in kind of next year, like when we're talking about maybe Main Street or things like that. There's gonna be a heavier expense next year, and then we're gonna roll out with the work. So then under other operating expenses, that's the insurance, land bank dues, travel, office supplies, equipment, rent, things like that. 2023 is actual from the audit. 2024, that increases due to the $25,000 general liability policy that we had to obtain in order to do the work. And then 25 to 28 shows a decrease in things like travel and equipment, so the funds can be used towards the possible increased salary. And, due to hiring possible, maybe another project manager. Capital asset outlay, that's demos, stabilizations, and property acquisition, which we are able to acquire properties with the Phase 2 money. And we're not sure with the Tyler versus Hennepin where we're gonna go, so we may be acquiring more properties instead of getting more properties donated. These expenses are all covered by the HCR Phase 2 grant. So again, in 2025, it's increased due to the grant extension, adding the additional funding to that year. So your bottom line, your excess of revenues and capital contribution over expenditures. In 2023, it's the actual numbers from the audit. 2024 includes the bank interest, sale of Ashley Place, and the HCR Phase 2 admin fee. 2025 through 2028 are increased due to the sale of the acquired properties. And then 26 through 2026 through 28 reduce over time because of the estimated possible salary increases, so that'll dip into the profits just a touch. Anybody have any questions?
We don't have to make a motion for that, it's just for.
No, we do.
information. We do, all right, I'll move it, I'll second by, Ms. Forcio, all in favor?
All right.
Opposed? Okay. Oh, right, that's Paris, but not Travel City Financial Report. Audit RFP,
So, we had to put the audit services out for RFP before the end of the year. So we have, if anybody wants to see the actual bids that came in, they're there on the table. And we had 3 responses, and EFPR, who is currently our audit firm, did come in the lowest. So Lumsden was close, but they steadily increase over the years, and not as much as EFPR. And then Drescher and Malecki was, well, we talked about bids, it was a little high. So,
Well, I don't.
That's because there's 2 of them. EFPR, it's 1 with,
So they just double.
is Lumsden McCormick one guy's name, but Drescher and Molesky, they've got a,
Well,
Just pressure and-
I would,
two families, yeah.
I would say, so as long as, as long as EFPR, we don't have any complaints. I don't know, when I looked at so I'm familiar with Drescher Malecki's workers, they audit the county, they do really good work, very comprehensive, very good. So I would feel very comfortable with them, but obviously I think what they bid seems to me to be a very fair bid. However, it's still twice what EFPR bid. So
yeah,
as a dollar amount, it's not a big difference. As a percentage, it's huge, right? And that's the problem. That's the laws of math. There's your problem. $15,000 is not at all shy. I think it's reasonable. I don't know how anyone does it for $7,500. I know generally what's involved in it, and they do come out here. So, but I don't have any reason, even though I'm very comfortable with Drescher and Malecki, and I will speak very highly of their work, and I would recommend them for any auditing job. I would recommend them. But EFPR has also done a good job. We have a fairly small budget. We haven't had any concerns with the product that they've provided. So if it's half of what Drescher and Malecki is, I don't really see where we have a choice. So, and I'm fine with it because we had to bid it out based on the procurement rules. The EFPR has not given us any reason to have to move on from the EFPR. So
one of the things is that we don't have that many transactions. There's not a lot to do. And I think that possibly it's because EFPR knows what's involved.
That's
They
why they
already
were able to
know
come
how
in.
much time it takes them to do it. So maybe that's why, they're able to do
No,
it so
I can-
low.
I actually was thinking, I had that conversation with somebody else, and I was actually thinking the same thing. It's much easier if you're the incumbent to respond to the bid, because you know exactly because the other companies, unless you've done this work, they may not appreciate what's actually involved, or how little is involved, or how much is involved. So I can
But our
understand
audits
that.
are public too, right? So
Oh,
they could go look at
I would
audits
guess.
and
No, I didn't.
any
I
firm,
didn't speak
any
to-
firm would say like, oh,
My conversation wasn't with Lumsden McCormick or Drescher Malecki. However, I would assume that I'm assuming they went looked at what they are.
Rick, it could be that they know what it's like to audit and to deal with you and not. And
And
they deliberately said, screw
Oh,
this.
see, that's writing that down too. No, I was,
Actually, up the group.
That's going right in the middle.
you actually read my mind. I was literally just about to say the same thing, because in all seriousness, when we get these audit reports, I spend a lot of time looking at the management letter and making changes or suggestions, the things that we want in there that maybe we didn't see, or the things that we want to focus on. And and to their credit, they just do it. Whatever we ask for, whatever we want enhanced, they'll do. So it probably had something to do with it, right? And they look at the list, they're like, oh my God. Not him again. 100,000.
So
Okay,
we
so-
just need a motion.
We have a motion
We need one.
for,
Motion.
what's the motion for?
Motion is to approve the selection of the FPR.
Okay, first, we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Vocio, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. 78 Bridge Street.
Okay, 78th Bridge Street, just to refresh your memories, the fire training facility in North Tonawanda, and we are taking it down to the concrete slab only. We did get six responses that varied a little bit in the dollar amounts. We were clear in the RFP about the special conditions of this with the contamination on the site. And I think the one recommendation I would make is that the lowest, the Wargo Enterprises, they didn't specify and they didn't respond to our RFP correctly. They didn't.
Well, that's no brainer. If they didn't respond correctly, then they're out.
Yeah, like for instance, they said they're going to take out the concrete slab. We specifically said leave it. So like, there's all that. There's all kinds of that.
Why, I just refresh my recollection. Why are we leaving the concrete slab?
The state approved this project even on a contaminated site, as long as
we
we,
don't want to disturb the.
they don't want the ground disturbed,
Okay,
but we can remove the structures.
that makes sense. All right. So then what's your recommendation?
I would say the next would be Regional Environmental Demolition. We've worked with them before. They're very good to work with. I trust them to handle the special case that this represents. And you know, I'm also comfortable working closely with them on it.
Well, they're also the Niagara County company.
Yes, that's also true.
And they've been coming pretty spot on their bids.
Yeah, they have always been right there with us. They did our demolition at 6 Ashley Place, and they did, not for us, but they've done large scale projects, so they're familiar with even contaminated sites like the Military Road School. That was RED.
All right, I'll move RED. Second by Mr. Casale, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Okay.
Before we get to Camp Out Boulevard, I just had one of those thoughts, because I just drove by there recently, and that was High Park Boulevard.
Mhm.
What's the status on that?
What do you mean?
The
The
Can't
junkyards,
Dog Bar?
Yeah, can't bubble over.
Camp Glover or junkyards?
I was thinking junkyards.
Oh, the junkyard.
Junkyards.
Past Quintino.
You're talking about-
Well, I don't need an answer today. Do you want to just follow up, find out where we're at, and just send me an email, because I want to kind of stay on top of that.
Yeah.
Katie's not here, but I think that Katie's still got that in the works.
Okay,
Anthony.
that's my
Tino
understanding.
is working through the foreclosure process with his attorneys.
Okay,
He's also working with the DEC for cleanup costs,
Gotcha.
so he's moving through that process.
Okay.
And Katie has been in touch with their council, so I'll touch base with them, but
that's fine.
that's moving.
That's
The
kind of
other
where I
nice
thought we were.
part, which was Camp Out Glover, that's
Right.
what was on the agenda, and I wanted to ask the board about.
Yeah, and that's what, Camp Out Boulevard, I always refer to that as Camp Out Boulevard.
One of the things we have done with the junkyards and Can't Dog Bar is just keep an eye on them
Yeah,
physically to make sure in there's.
What's the status on Camp Out Boulevard? Where are we in that process?
so, okay, so this is what Katie and I were speaking, and I asked if she could send out, I don't know if it would be the appropriate terms, like a time of the essence letter or what, some sort of letter that says, we're gonna give you a time frame, and then we're gonna go in a different direction.
For the actual transfer?
Well, we transferred the tax lien, but no paperwork has been
Right.
signed.
Right.
The board voted to authorize the transfer in January.
Right.
The presentation was made in December.
Right.
And then we've had a lot of through the months, a lot of back and forth with the attorney. We've had conference calls. Katie's responded to all the questions. We supplied all the documents. We've answered all those questions to an attorney who said, that Mr. Hellner still has to find the attorneys and do foreclosure, because the attorney that Katie's talking to, I don't think had, the expertise to do the foreclosure. So apparently Mr. Hellner finally has an attorney now. We were told this in September, but we haven't heard from that attorney. But this has been going back and forth. I looked back at all the communications. We spoke to them, following the meeting in January. I reached a phone call to the attorney. We've had calls and emails from April and May, conference calls in July. The last correspondence was in September. He responded to more questions. and we find out who the attorney is, but it just seems like this has been going on for a while. And I asked Katie to sort of send a letter, and she said, just put this in front of the board and make sure that they're comfortable with that before I do this.
So the letter would do what?
Just something in writing saying, what Katie, I'm sure will help determine what the reasonable amount of time is to say, like, if this isn't done by X date,
Right.
we're going to,
90 days to file your petition for the foreclosure.
is that, okay.
That's probably what she's doing, something like that. You know,
But she just didn't want to move forward with that action.
and I'm
without
sure
board.
that, yeah, we have the ability to, and I know that when we transferred the lien, I'm sure that there were restrictions that we put on it so that we could, recover that at some point in time if there wasn't.
There was, but I don't think the work hasn't even resigned.
Oh, well, that's not even an issue. We can
Well, that's just exactly it.
like, I'm not trying to move in a different direction if we have a plan. I don't even read, what was Ryan, is that his name Ryan?
No, it was Roland
Roland.
Helmer. His plan, so he has a background in redeveloping like old industrial buildings, and then I think he uses them, I went back and looked at it. He repurposes them and puts them, into like use by just basically leasing it out to companies. So, I mean, he quoted the total project cost of $2 million, he was going to purchase the property for less than $50,000. He does have a good history in doing these projects. He did it in Middleport, Lockport, Alcott. So, I don't know. Yeah, he said that,
It's been a while, it's been 10 months.
yeah, so I think,
Oh, that's perfect, cold storage.
yeah, I don't wanna speak on behalf of the board, but it seemed like we
Is
were
it being
really
used?
optimistic about his, we think he has the ability and to do it. I don't know if it's just been a matter of like, attorneys, like his attorney not moving this, I don't know where the holdup is. I think he's still interested too, but I think there has to be some sort of, at this point, some sort of sense of urgency put in place.
Yeah, we're not trying to move in a different direction.
No, but we
Appreciate his
need to
help,
just-
but we have to know it's been almost a year.
Is he borrowing money as part of his? I mean, because what I've seen with some of our developers is that they're slow walking things because the interest rates were so high.
Oh, that could be it too.
So
I'm sure there's a.
they're just like, well,
I just think there needs
you
to be
know,
a sense of
we'll
urgency.
we'll take 3 months to
review
review this piece of paper.
And I will say, so during the summer, we told the town, we transferred this, just hold on. And the town was getting frustrated because of the issues that, and to Mr. Heller's credit, I think that he sent somebody out there to cut the grass, even though it's not legally allowed to. But the town's getting frustrated, so
Yeah, with the town, the towns typically have a program where they go out and maintain the properties and then put it on the tax bill. So I don't understand what the issue is with the town. I can tell you the town of Lockport, if you're not mowing them out, they'll send somebody out mow it, and to send them on your bill.
I remember, it wasn't one of the issues with water, it was.
yeah, but the town's not,
Water with the,
yeah, the
dock
water,
area,
yeah,
and the
yeah.
mosquitoes.
Oh, yeah.
I just think that the land bank board needs to show, on the record that they're focused on this, and there's a sense of urgency.
Yeah, I don't. And it was, it seemed like there's opportunities, but it was just storage. I'm surprised we didn't get more interest in it.
Yeah,
For 50,000, you don't even have to do a lot to use it for storage. The place it's massive. It's more than strong enough to hold anything. You can fit cars, boats. I don't understand. I'm not looking to buy it and develop it, but I'm just saying, I'm surprised we didn't get more interest. Maybe it's just the sheer magnitude and size of the facility. It's a pretty big bite. What's the project manager update? Do you have anything?
I did, so I was gonna present more, I had a PowerPoint on the conference that we attended, because Amy and I presented on regional land banks and combining services to create efficiencies to support economic and community development. We talked a lot about how we are different than other land banks because we're housed in the county's Department of Economic Development and the IDA, which kind of gives us more of that focus. Our brownfields and commercial and industrial development is different than other things. But I'll say that for when Amy's here, we can kind of, just recap a little bit of that. The only other thing I kind of wanted to go over was 2010 Maine. and kind of give you all just an idea that SHPO, I think I mentioned this at our last meeting, is working with the architecture firm that Rodriguez Group hired to do our plan for them. And that architect is working with Carrie Trainer. I don't know if anybody knows Carrie Trainer. She's like the historic preservationist in Western New York. She's like a professor at UB. So we're gonna have all we need to do whatever it is we wanna do with 2010 Main from a document standpoint. That's where we're at now because we need to finish that SHPO process to get all of the environmental checklists approved by HCR to incur capital expenses on the property. However, we have pre-development funds already dedicated to do all of that. Once HCR approves the funding, Rodriguez Group is ready, like they are with our houses, to start. I kind of given them the idea that what we want to have happen is when we get the capital funding, when we can start stabilizing the building, I want them to put a tarp on the roof and scaffolding, whatever they're going to do to make it look immediately like things are happening. That's, part of and then that'll encourage them to continue to work through the winter, to work whatever they can get done to stabilize and prevent further deterioration to the building, because that's our number one concern right now. They're ready to go with that. The last piece of the puzzle is the funding, which I was going to suggest. So as Jackie kind of mentioned in our financial report with the phase 2 money, we have a little over, $600,000 we have to commit still. So one of the things that we got a commitment from, we had a meeting with Niagara University about this building, about 2010/2018 Main. So verbally in this meeting with the mayor, the president, the city, or not the president, the president of the university, the mayor of the city, there was a verbal sort of agreement kind of, coalescing around these addresses as a student housing place. We talked about parking, we talked about, amenities and all that kind of stuff. What that would probably necessitate us to do is, like I mentioned, when we first get that capital approval for 2010, we start spending on it. We start spending on 2010 so that we can show that we're spending on that property. Then we can go back to HCR to let them know that we're ready for the 2010-2018 project, which they're basically already aware of, and that we could have that as a separate application in the phase 3, round 3 funding for next year to stabilize the 2, prepare them for the development with that unit.
Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, when we spoke with
Crystal Leffler.
and we explained that 2010-2018 could potentially be, because it was prior to meeting with NU,
Mhm.
student housing, that was like its own separate project. She was really supportive of that. So
Very
I feel
supportive.
really comfortable that we can take on 2010 and 18 and stabilize it / demolish it and basically get it prepared. And NU is gonna work with us, so when they're selecting a developer, we will communicate with them, so that way we're kind of doing things in preparing it for the way they're gonna be able to take it to the next step and build student housing.
We realize that this is a heavy lift of a building, and the state is actually very encouraging of us taking our time a little bit to make sure that we don't, like, for example, we wouldn't want to go all out on 2010 Main unless we know that 2018 is part of the thing. And when we have, the control of, let's say, both, we can possibly design a better project that would be more, with a developer that would be more user-friendly or just meet the needs better.
Yep.
What's the issue with 2018? Is it title? Is it because it's?
It's still a Blue Cardinal property.
Part of the Blue Cardinal.
So the URA is actually in the process, the renewal agency is in the process of acquiring that property.
Does the city have its own urban renewal agency?
Mhm.
I didn't realize that. I guess I did.
You're looking at the executive.
I didn't realize, I just, we don't talk about it a lot, so, because I didn't.
It was, it was mostly active, with the large urban renewal from the 60s. and
Yes,
70s.
that's what I was.
But it's still, it's still an active board, which is mostly city council on the board. few others.
Well, I know, I'm old enough to remember when urban renewal, how it transformed the city of Lockport, and it's devastating.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have a great track record.
Oh, just
Niagara Falls
devastating.
has-
I look at
especially,
pictures from the sixties, I'm like, my God, if we had those buildings back, instead of the parking ramp that we tore down. And I just, instead of that strip mall, that used to be buildings that you just can't even recreate, it's hard to look at.
Oh,
But that was
We have the
the
Rainbow
mindset,
Center,
you
and we
can't go
have-
back.
So we have the Rainbow Center, and we have the casino now that we're part of the urban.
Right, that was part of it.
So, yeah, I'm actually the executive director of the urban renewal agency as well. So we meet and.
Do you get federal monies for that through the urban renewal? So
No,
what is the scope and purpose of the agency? Like what, that would give it something different than what the city has? I mean, isn't that really the purpose, to have some sort of authority or flexibility or funding? That the
Yeah, I
city
mean,
would have otherwise?
one of the things is we are tax exempt versus, so like, that's where we're talking with moving a lot of these properties into the urban renewal agency. So like land bank, we're tax exempt status. We have a little bit more flexibility when it comes to procurements and things like that. So but I mean, like I said, largely the urban renewal agency is the city, because the entire council is part of the board, as well as the mayor is the chair, and we have a few at-large members from the general public. But there hasn't been, I mean, since I've been here, there's been very little activity in the urban renewal agency. Talk about having our audits, but we basically payroll is basically. There's a few members of stipends where we don't really get funding in at this point. So we just have our bank account that we're just kind of sitting out. I mean, we're in receipt of funding, so for the property acquisitions, the city council did transfer funding to us for property acquisitions. The state's giving URA a grant to help offset the cost for that. So that's how we're working on these property acquisitions right now through the urban renewal agency.
All right, great. I appreciate that. Thank you. Matt, anything else?
No, that was a bulk of an update. I wanted to make sure we're on the same page there.
Okay, well, I eagerly await your presentation on the meeting. It'd be hard for me to sleep until the next meeting.
I'll tell you all about St. Louis, Missouri. Bird scooters, which are big mentee. I'm sure they've had your issues with those. It was a great conference.
Are
It
you
was.
you're going to send out that document to the board?
Yes. Speaking of that conference,
Those scooters you rent?
yeah,
Are they actual
it's
scooters?
an app on your phone. You just scan a little QR code, and you can ride this electric scooter anywhere.
What's it mean? What's a scooter?
There's a great South Park episode.
You're talking about Bird?
Bird and Lime and all these are
What
everywhere.
do you mean by scooter? Like one of the things you stand up on?
Yeah, stand up. And it's
Remember
like,
the Razor scooters that
Yeah.
were out?
They're
It's
running
that,
those out.
essentially.
You've
They're-
never seen that?
An
It's
electric
electric,
version
yeah.
of
I've
that.
seen that.
That's insane. No, I've seen the bikes that you can rent, but
We heard
scooters?
in North Carolina for about 6 months.
No, that's insane.
There is a South Park episode.
Well,
I'm
no,
serious,
but-
and it is awesome.
What's insane is the scooters were like, correct me
Why
if I'm
always-
wrong, around, mostly around bars.
well, and it was.
And it's like,
Well, you can't drive, but you don't need a license to ride a scooter, do you?
no, but you know, after
you're-
you
if you
throw a
operate
few
down
back
the
and
road,
then you
you
get on
can
a
still-
scooter, that can
You
only
still
as
can't
well.
operate it on the road if you're intoxicated.
And it goes 12 miles an hour. Like you're not going slow on these scooters.
No,
Like,
but that's my point. As a personal injury lawyer, I can't even wrap my head around that.
oh no, it was.
It's, oh,
Yeah.
it's a,
You can really bring
reminds,
it up.
it reminds, it's that Seinfeld episode when Kramer wanted to do the make your own pizza. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And Jerry said, that's a great idea. Just have people throw their hands in a 400-degree oven and throw stuff at it. What could go wrong? We'll rent scooters and go 12 miles an hour to people who've never ridden a scooter who are probably intoxicated, and I'm sure that everything will be fine.
Well, Rick, on top of that, you love the fact that, because this was coming out in New York City and DC when I was there, so people used to just throw that in piles on the sidewalk.
Oh yeah, no, it was.
So you'd have to walk around like piles of scooters, because there was no, like, they didn't lock them to anything, like, because you can just, it self-locks.
All the
And
things that seem obvious.
they were leaving them on Capitol Hill, so the Capitol Hill police were just taking them and storing them because they couldn't use them. we ran the station, people would leave them inside the station, like in the middle of the concourses.
Yeah.
We would just take them and throw them in the basement.
It was a mess. It was an
It
incredible
was
mess.
Well, North Tonawanda, we had them for about
Sorry.
6 months all over town.
Yeah.
And then the city attorney determined that the exposure for the municipality was far too high to allow them.
That's pretty much what everybody
You mean
determined.
that was determined after?
Yeah, well.
Well, you give them a chance to actually have a operation that makes sense, but when people are just literally throwing them on it, like they just walk up to the front of a store and throw them on the ground.
Well, that's what you would expect. You would think that all those things would have been accounted for before you actually started the business, liability being number one. Did you not even talk to one personal injury lawyer? Because I would have told you right up front. As soon as you said scooters, I'm like, that's insane.
Oh, no,
Like, I don't even know, I can't wrap my head around that.
and it's Bird and Lime, but they've been bought by Uber and Lyft. So like, they're major companies that are doing this.
Well, in there, I hate to do this to you, Chris, I'm sorry.
I'm
Did
loving
you see the Family Guy episode or Uber? That was that's my favorite one of all time. When Peter walks into the Uber office, I'd like to be an Uber driver. And then the guy behind the desk says, okay, you're an Uber driver.
But that's what all these technology companies did. They just went ahead with it and then figured it out later.
And I hope I don't get sued. This is live. No, I'm just repeating a Family Guy episode. It's not a personal opinion. So my disclaimer is, it has nothing, not a reflection on my own personal opinions or my commentary on Uber or Bird.
We love all of that.
Yes, we do.
No, I mean, all
Okay,
cases
so
we've
are
been
we-
backing into it. Right?
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's no.
I think we don't have anything else. Chris, is there anything you want
Other
to talk about?
business or attorney business?
Unless you don't have anything. You have anything?
I
I'm
can
not
have a
gonna lie.
motion for adjournment if one is called for.
Well, you can have one. You want to move for adjournment?
I'll move for adjournment.
Second by Mr. Forma, all in favor? Okay, thank you.
Are you something like that?
I do watch it.